All right, let's get started. Today we're going to put on our architect hats. But, instead of designing physical buildings, we're going to be drawing up the blueprint for success inside an organization. We are diving deep into managerial planning and goal setting, which is, when you think about it, the absolute foundation for any company that wants to do more than just exist. It's about how they build their future. So, let's get into it.
And this is really the central question, isn't it? I mean, the future is, by definition, uncertain. The market can change on a dime, some new technology pops up out of nowhere, or a competitor makes a move you just didn't see coming. And yet, if you're a manager, your job is to somehow chart a course right through all that fog. Because without a plan, a business is just, well, it's drifting. It's completely at the mercy of whatever happens. So this question is the real challenge that planning is trying to solve. It's all about creating a guide that's solid enough to give everyone direction, but also flexible enough to handle a few curveballs. That balance, that's the real magic of good management.
I love this quote because it just cuts right to the chase. It's so true. Any of us can wish for things, right? We can wish for more profits. We can wish to be number one in the market. But until we actually sit down and create a detailed blueprint, a real plan that spells out exactly how we're going to get from here to there, well, those goals are just daydreams. A plan is what turns that wish into something real, something you can actually work towards. Okay, so here's our blueprint for today. First, we're going to lay the foundation and talk about why planning is so critical. Then, we'll look at the actual organizational blueprint, starting from the very top. After that, we'll get into the nitty-gritty of how to write goals that actually get results. We'll also see how to take that plan and put it into action. And, super important, what to do when things inevitably go wrong. And then, we'll wrap it all up with how to pass the final inspection.
Your exam.
So let's start with Section 1. Think about it. Before an architect even thinks about walls or windows, they are obsessed with the foundation. Because they know if the foundation is weak, the whole structure will eventually collapse. In management, planning is that foundation. It's the absolute first step for everything else a manager does. Now take a look at this diagram. It shows the 4 main jobs of a manager, and the order here is absolutely critical. See how planning is right there at the start? It has to be. You can't really organize your resources and your people if you have no idea what you're trying to build. You can't effectively lead a team if you can't tell them where you're going. And you for sure can't control for performance if you haven't even defined what a good result looks like in the first place. So every other function, organizing, leading, and controlling, it all flows from the plan. Planning is the engine that drives the entire management process. Okay, so let's make sure we're all on the same page with our terms. It's simple, really. A goal is the what. It's that place in the future you want to be. It's the destination on the map. Things like become the market leader or increase our customer loyalty by 15%. The plan, then, is the how. It's the detailed roadmap that shows you exactly how to get to that destination. It outlines the steps, who's doing what resources you need. It's the whole shebang. So going back to that quote, the goal is the wish, but the plan is what makes it possible. They're two sides of the same coin. You just can't have one without the other. All right, on to Section 2. Now that we get why planning is so important, let's look at what the blueprint actually looks like. In a big company, it's not just one plan. It's more like a whole set of blueprints, a hierarchy of plans that all fit together perfectly, starting from the very, very top. And this pyramid right here, this is the key visual to understanding how it all works. It shows you how a massive organization can get thousands of people all pulling in the same direction. It all starts at the top, with the mission statement. That guides the strategic goals, which then break down into tactical goals, and finally, all the way at the base, you have the day-to-day operational goals. Everything flows downwards. So let's break down each of these levels one by one.
So, at the very peak of our pyramid, we have the mission statement. And look, this isn't just some nice-sounding sentence they put in the annual report. A real mission statement is the organization's core purpose. It's its reason for getting out of bed in the morning. Think about a company like Patagonia. Their mission is something like, we're in business to save our home planet. That powerful statement drives everything they do, the materials they use, the causes they support, everything. It's the ultimate North Star that every single employee can look to for direction.
Okay, so right below that mission, the blueprint starts to get more specific. First up, you've got senior management, the C-suite. They set the big, broad strategic goals. These are long-term, maybe 3 to 5 years out. Something like become the top electric vehicle manufacturer in Europe. Then, that big goal gets handed down to middle management, who have to translate it into tactical goals for their specific departments. So the head of marketing's tactical goal might be launch a major ad campaign in Germany and France within 18 months. And finally, that cascades down to lower management, who create the very specific operational goals. A social media manager's goal might be, increase our Instagram engagement in Germany by 25% this quarter. See how each level's goal is a direct piece of the puzzle for the level above it? This slide shows that cascade effect perfectly in a real-world scenario. Let's trace it. So the company's big mission is to be the #1 supplier of recyclable food containers. Okay, great. To do that, a top management objective is created. We must deliver error-free products 100% of the time. The head of the manufacturing division then takes that and creates a tactical goal. We will achieve 100% on-time production of those error-free products. Getting more specific, the plant manager aims to increase the error-free acceptance rate by 16%. But how? Well, it goes all the way down to the shift supervisor's operational goal. Assess my machine operator's skills and train them specifically on how to produce error-free products. It's just a beautiful, unbroken chain of logic from the very top to the very bottom. That is what alignment looks like. Okay, let's move on to our third section. So you can have this amazing aligned structure, but if the goals themselves are poorly written, it's all for nothing. A blueprint with blurry lines and vague instructions is totally useless, right? Well, the same is true for goals. If you want goals that actually motivate people and deliver results, there are some very specific rules you have to follow.
So, this mind map here lays out the 5 key ingredients for a really well-constructed goal. Now, a lot of you have probably heard of the acronym SMART goals before, and these principles line up with that framework almost perfectly. A really effective goal has to be specific and measurable, it needs a defined time period, it has to cover key result areas, that's the relevant part of SMART, and it's got to be challenging but realistic, which is the achievable part. So let's take a closer look at what each of these means in the real world.
So here they are, all 5 rules. Now let's put them to the test. A terrible goal, a useless goal, would be something like, do a better job with customer service. What does that even mean? It's vague, you can't measure it, it's just a wish. Now, a good goal, a powerful goal would sound like this. We will improve our customer satisfaction score, specific, from an 85% approval rating to 92% measurable by the end of Q3, time-bound, by launching the new support software to reduce call wait times, covering a key result area. And we know this is a stretch, but it's possible, challenging but realistic. And if the team hits it, everyone gets a bonus, linked to rewards. See the night and day difference? One is a fuzzy idea, the other is a concrete target.
All right, section 4. We've got our amazing blueprint. The goals are beautifully written. But now comes the most critical part of all, execution. You know, a perfect plan that just sits in a binder on a shelf is completely worthless. We need a system, a process, to actually bring it to life and manage the construction day in and day out.
And this is where a really powerful system called Management by Objectives, or MBO, comes into play. It's a classic for a reason. As you can see, it's a 4-step cycle that's all about making sure what individuals and teams do every day lines up with the big company goals. So, step 1, set goals. And the key here is that managers and employees do this together. This collaboration is huge for motivation. Step 2, develop action plans. They don't just agree on the goal, they map out the specific steps to get there. Step 3, review progress. This is so important. This is not a set it and forget it process. There are regular check-ins to see how things are going and make course corrections. And finally, step 4, appraise performance. At the end of the period, you formally look at the results, and this is often tied to things like bonuses or promotions. And then, the results of that appraisal feed right back into setting goals for the next cycle. It's a continuous loop of getting better.
Now, it's also important to know that not all plans are built the same way. We need to split them into 2 main types, and our architect metaphor works perfectly here. First, you have single-use plans. These are designed for goals that are unique and will only happen once. Think of it as the literal blueprint for one specific skyscraper. Once that building is finished, you don't use that exact blueprint again. Then you have standing plans. These are for activities that happen over and over and over again. This is like the city's building code. It provides a set of rules and guidelines that apply to every new building to ensure safety and consistency. Let's make this super concrete with some real-world examples. Look at Tesla's goal to launch the Cybertruck. That was a massive, one-time objective. It needed a single-use plan, a huge, detailed project plan covering everything from retooling the factory to the global marketing launch. Now think about Starbucks. Their goal to ensure consistent customer service is never ending. It's an ongoing thing. So they use a standing plan, a very specific procedure that dictates exactly how a barista greets you, takes your order, and makes your drink, whether you're in Seattle or Singapore. And finally, Google's goal to foster innovation. That's also continuous, so they have a standing plan in the form of a policy, their legendary 20% time policy, that's always in effect for their engineers. Okay, on to our fifth section. Look, even the most brilliant architect with the most perfect blueprint knows that things can go wrong. A key supplier could go out of business. A freak storm could delay construction for a week. A smart manager, just like a smart architect, doesn't just cross their fingers and hope for the best. They plan for the worst.
And there are two main ways we prepare for this kind of turbulence. The first is contingency planning. This is basically creating plan Bs for things that you can reasonably foresee might go wrong. For example, a shipping company might have a contingency plan for a major port strike, which involves rerouting ships to other ports. It's a known risk, so they plan for it. Crisis planning, though, is a bit different. This is for events that are sudden, massive, and often totally unexpected. Think about an IT company's crisis plan for a massive data breach. It's a low-probability event, but if it happens, it's devastating. You need an immediate, pre-planned response protocol to handle it. You really need both.
And here we are, our final section. I know this is the one a lot of you have been waiting for. We've gone through the whole process. We designed the blueprint, we oversaw the construction. Now it's time to make sure our building is going to pass that final inspection. Let's talk about how you can absolutely nail the exam on this topic.
So, what's the question you're likely to get? Well, examiners really love this topic because it's not just about memorizing definitions. It tests your ability to connect all the dots, to see the big picture. They want to see if you truly understand that entire chain of logic, from a company's highest level purpose all the way down to a specific, concrete action.
Okay, here is your game plan for getting full marks. You'll probably get a question that looks something like this. Describe the planning process and explain how goals are aligned at different organizational levels. Here's exactly how you answer it. First, start with a crisp definition of planning. Say it's the core management function of setting goals and figuring out how to achieve them. Second, use the pyramid model to structure your entire answer. Literally say, the process can be understood as a hierarchy, and then walk them through each level. Mission, strategic, tactical, and operational. Explain what each one is and who is typically responsible. Finally, and this is the pro tip that will separate you from everyone else, use an example to show the cascade. You can even make one up. Say something like, for instance, a company with a mission to create the safest cars on the road might have a strategic goal to achieve a 5-star safety rating on all its models. This leads to a tactical goal for the engineering department to develop a new type of airbag, which then leads to an operational goal for a specific engineer to run 50 simulations on that new airbag design by Friday. Showing that connection proves you don't just know the theory, you know how it actually works. That's deep understanding.
And that's a wrap. We've covered the entire process, from that big, inspiring mission statement all the way down to the daily operational plan. The amazing thing is, these principles are universal. They work for giant corporations, they work for tiny startups, and honestly, they work for your own life and career. So the only question left is for you to think about, now that you have the blueprint, what are you going to build?